My name's Steve Keniston. This is probably my third tech field day. Predominantly, I've been doing storage tech field days, right? So this is my first security one. Super excited to be here. I don't think I've done a tech field day for a number of years, but I love this format. And as Tom said, it's not a typical webinar, which is why I really enjoy it. And plus getting your feedback, folks who are practitioners, folks who know about this technology, giving us real feedback, good questions, it's all a part of it. So as Tom said, you know, Dell, the largest security company you've never heard of, right? That's probably because we're not in the habit of selling security widgets per se. I got to kind of be careful with how I say that, because we do sell our PowerProtect Cyber Recovery, which Brian's going to talk about a little later. That is specifically a security tool, you know, vaulting set up for catching your data so that you can recover seamlessly. Adam's going to talk about MDR, so Managed Detection and Response. That's kind of where we do our detection capabilities. I guess that's more of a service than a widget, but at the end of the day, I've been doing more and more thinking about this, and you know, sooner or later, I think things like servers, networking gear, storage gear, they are going to be security widgets. If they're not secure, right, you can't build out your next infrastructure. And that's part of what we want to try to bring to you, right, is the fact that we build security into every single thing that we do, right? And it's important to understand and recognize this, because as customers are building their next workload, they're going to need a server, they're going to need storage, they're going to need to protect it, but they got to do all that. Not only do they need to make the application that they're building secure, but they need to make the technology around that secure. So that's only going to help foster kind of that wave of what they're building. So we're going to take the next few moments here. We're going to go through our story. I'm going to, like I said, I'm Steve Keniston. We're going to talk about, you know, the overarching strategy overall of what Dell brings to you and how we think about security. Then three other folks are going to help me out here. So we have Samir Shah, who's going to talk about, we call these our practice areas, so helping to reduce the attack surface. Adam Miller is going to talk about detection and response and what we do in that area. All of these are across the portfolio, not just single things that we talk about and sell. And then at the end, Brian's going to talk about recovering from a cyber attack. So if you noticed, our kind of tag here is advancing your cybersecurity maturity. We used to talk about transforming your security with confidence, right? And transforming confidence ended up being, you know, very popular with customers. But transforming your security with confidence felt a lot too much like a lift and shift. But advancing your cybersecurity maturity really felt like we could now talk to the customers, meet them where they are, and knowing that they've spent a lot of money in both people, resources, technology, time. How do we help meet them where they are? And with this ever-evolving set of threats, because cybersecurity is always changing, especially now with Gen AI and that sort of thing, how do we help them come from where they are and move further along their journey and continue to build a secure infrastructure? So we don't necessarily like to talk about the fear tactics when talking about, you know, why cybersecurity. I think everybody knows it costs millions to recover, right? There's millions of attacks a day, et cetera, et cetera. What we want to try to do is paint a picture for our customers as to why having a secure infrastructure is very beneficial, right? So you can outperform your peers by 2x if you have a nice secure infrastructure. We talk about innovating with confidence. That's a big thing for Dell. We're not just a product supplier, but we help customers build innovation into what they do. So you're 7.7 times more likely to get your products and things to market if you have a secure infrastructure. Your NPS scores end up being 8.5 times more likely, because we all know when you're hit with ransom attacks and that sort of thing, your company reputation can suffer. So there's a lot of positive benefits that come with having a secure infrastructure, including how do you help yourself make more money, and that's by having a secure infrastructure. So one of the things that we talked a lot about last year, and kind of my perspective is, cybersecurity encompasses a lot of things, and we're going to talk about zero trust today. We're going to talk about obviously cybersecurity. We're going to talk about all these capabilities and technologies that are built in. And I think a lot of these things fall in underneath that overarching term cybersecurity. However, because, like I said, the main widget we do sell is our Cyber Recovery Vault, resilience is also top of mind for a lot of customers. It's not just about security, but it's about resilience. So we talk to our customers about how to build security into everything that they do, but also how to make sure that their environment is totally resilient. And one of the things that is actually a lot of the things within the presentations that we're going to talk about is, there's a lot of, we talk about people, process, and technology, and everybody knows from a people standpoint, there's kind of a dearth of expertise in the security world. But from the process standpoint, that controls as much of your security infrastructure as it does as the technology does. For example, when you talk about resilience, in order to ensure you're building a resilient infrastructure, testing and practicing your recoveries becomes paramount. And not enough folks do this, right? I talk a lot about why does the military practice and train their drills every single day? It's so that when things go awry, they know exactly what to do without even having to think about it. And much like, in the battlefield with security, things are going to come in, they're going to be the norm. Attacks are going to happen. You want to be able to handle those quickly without thinking too much. You know what to do, you address those. But every once in a while is going to come that weird, attack. And you're going to have to really use some brain power to figure out, hey, what is actually going on? What do I need to do? How do I need to outthink this thing and get ahead of it, right? And you want those resources available in your technology people to be able to handle a lot of those things that are going on, right? So, practicing using your processes a lot better, right? All make a difference as far as how you build a resilient infrastructure as well as a secure infrastructure. So when we talk about advancing your cybersecurity maturity, we often try to define first, what does security maturity mean, or resilience maturity, or whatever, right? So it really starts out with, it is a cyclical cycle, right? It starts out with, what is your business? What is your organization? Have you sat down and looked at the business controls that you need to monitor, and you need to make sure, and classified your data, classified your applications to make sure that you're building resilience into the things that really, really matter, and how do you cascade that through your infrastructure? That's number one. Number two is, what frameworks align best to what I'm trying to do? There might be different frameworks that make a difference and can help you, especially if you're in a regulated industry, that can help you achieve some of the goals that you're trying to achieve. And then on top of that, how do you make sure that everyone is educated? And when I say educated, I don't just mean, hey, make sure the end users know not to pick on that phishing email, but there's as much testing and training that needs to happen for the IT professionals that need to know what technology is out there, what's available, what does it solve, and that sort of thing, right? And then we move into the defense area, and that's where we're going to talk about our practice areas. So how do you make sure you're looking after your attack surface? How do you look after the detection and response capabilities for when that attack does get through? And then from a recovery standpoint, getting the business back to operational, right? We're going to talk about all three of those things in the sessions that Samir, Adam, and Brian are going to talk about. Then you also need to be able to report up to, whether it be the board of directors or whomever, what's going on in my environment. Am I secure? Am I in a regulated business and I have to prove to someone that my environment is secure, right? So once you do all that, then you need to test and make sure that it is secure. And if you're doing a good job, you're then applying penetration testing, vulnerability testing. You're looking at what new holes or what new gaps do I have. Maybe 6 months later, you build a bunch of new applications, or you have a new bunch of workloads. You want to make sure those are as secure as well. One of the things we also talk about is making sure that 100% of your workloads are secure. Oftentimes, and we've presented at a number of events and a number of shows, customers will talk about, hey, I need to make sure my Gen AI workload is secure. Hey, I need to make sure this workload is secure. And I say, before you go down those roads, you need to really think about that you're making sure that all of your workloads are secure. So good security hygiene doesn't replace those one-off capabilities, right? You want to make sure that all your critical applications, whether it be your ERP system, your CRM system, your websites, that sort of thing, they're all secure, including Gen AI, right? And then each one of those applications or each one of those workloads tends to have a little bit of nuance as far as how those things can be attacked, or how those things can be infiltrated. And that's where you then apply the additional 10% of security capabilities that may relate to that particular workload. So this all comes from, really looking at, after you have good security hygiene across all of your workloads, then looking deeper at what's happening inside some of these other things that are going on. So we look at this through the lens of what we call a threat funnel, right? So at the top of the threat funnel is your attack surface. In the middle of this threat funnel is how do I respond to those attacks that come in, and the bottom part is recovery, right? So in the first thing, and we've transitioned, and Dell does a lot of this in its marketing, our three capabilities are protection, resilience, and confidence. And I never really heard a customer come to one of our sellers and ask, how do I buy confidence from you, right? So we kind of transitioned the talking points for our how we talk about security into real, what I call practice areas that are really resonating with customers, right? Customers think in terms of these three areas. They build out their security infrastructure in terms of these three areas. And so they look at, how do I reduce that attack surface as best I can to keep the number of threats as minimal as I can? And when I do that, but I know something's going to get through, how do I better detect and respond what's happening? What are my technologies, and how do I do that there? And then once I've detected it, once I've responded, once I've gone through my forensic analysis, how then can I recover both securely, but also then make sure it doesn't happen again, right? And so one of the things that happens in a lot of places is that when organizations build out kind of, whether it be pillars like this or practice areas like this, is everybody wants to know, and Dell's a pretty large company, right? I'll talk, maybe I might say BU, like business units or that sort of thing. Dell's got a bunch of business units, right? So servers, it has a business unit, networking has a business unit, data protection, storage, our CSG business unit, which is all of our PCs and that sort of thing. Everybody wants to know, where does my product fit in this? And what I've asked the customers to do, not the customers, what I've asked the business units to do, and also when I talk to customers, how do I change my lens and how I look at security within my organization is, don't think of, I need to buy a product to solve any one of these three things, right? Because we all know in the security space, tool sprawl is a huge problem, right? And if I'm buying a single tool to do each one of these in each workload, right, I've got a massive mess of things I need to manage and clean up, right? But it's more, how do I look at all three of those things and ensure that the products and solutions that I'm buying for that workload or for that piece of infrastructure have all three in mind? So I use this as an example all the time. Dell's data protection products, they have multi-factor authentication, they have roles-based access, they have dual authentication for sensitive commands. All three of those things help to reduce the attack surface of my backup. Then inside the backup, we have a technology that we OEM through index engines called CyberSense that is constantly looking at the data that gets into the backup for any types of malicious activity, anomalies, et cetera, et cetera. We've also, and we will probably talk about this a little bit later, we've also built some relationships with our partners on how to do even more MDR capabilities within the backup space, right? So that's detecting and responding what's going on within your backup. And then from a recovery standpoint, we have isolation, immutability, we have vaulting. All of those things take place on the recovery side to help you ensure you have a clean recovery, right? So that's one particular area, data protection, that looks at all three of those things as a whole unit, right? So it makes my life a lot simpler when I put something like this in place, that I'm not having to buy individual solutions for everything.
Hey, Steve.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about what Dell's vision of like immutable backups for security entails?
What immutable backups do? Brian will talk about it when he goes through the backup section. But I mean, we have immutability built into our solutions today. So it's there, but he can go deeper on what immutability actually means.
And so are we mainly talking about the servers or the appliances?
We're talking about the entire portfolio.
Okay.
Everything in the portfolio, from PCs to servers to storage to data protection solutions to software. We're talking about everything.
Okay.
Yep. So on the attack surface side, and this is just some recent data from the latest Ponymon report, and this is a good example of how processes really affect your environment as much as or a lot more than technologies. Samir is going to go into some of the technology capabilities that are built into all of our solutions, PCs, everything, about how to alleviate some of this. But if we just look at the attack vectors that come in, whether it be phishing, stolen credentials, social engineering, patch management, all of these things have nothing to really do with technology. It has to do with how good is my education and training? How do I make sure that physical security compromise? Do they know not to do, tailgating when they go into a building? Things that seem like common sense, but people don't do. That's 53% of the attacks. So that's almost half of the attacks at the attack surface that can be stopped with just better education. And then on top of that, you want to implement, technologies. And like I said, Samir's going to go into that. But when you start to layer in multi-factor authentication, when you start to layer in roles-based access, all of those become the technology capabilities that help even strengthen your attack surface to reduce the number of folks that can get through. Now on the detection and response, right, ultimately detection and response, the mindset is much like the recovery process, right? Time to resolution. How do I make that a lot faster? So you think about utilizing things like threat intelligence services can gain you 28 days of time back for recovering from an attack. Or things like a good IR strategy, right, can help you make sure that you're recovering a lot faster. Attack surface management tools and technologies, and Adam's going to go into a lot of those when it comes to the detect and respond side of things. All of these things help you recover your environment a lot faster. So we want to be thinking about things like automation really help, because it can take a lot of the things that end up going on a manual process and do it for you and do it a lot faster. On the recovery side of things, and when I talk about recovery, and it is a good question, it's not just about, a lot of times when we say recover or recovery within Dell, people think our backup solution, right? But believe it or not, a lot of our other solutions do recovery as well. Like our PCs do recovery, our servers do recovery. But just from a backup standpoint, a backup and recovery standpoint, only 37% of organizations actually recover from a vault or an isolated environment. And when you think about the number of vendors out there selling backup products that have been selling backup products in a cyber-infested world, talking about how do I do this better, leveraging immutability, leveraging vaulting, 37% is pretty low and could actually help if you implemented these kinds of things to recover your environment more cleanly. Only 40% of the folks out there leverage encryption, whether it be on their primary storage or on their desktop, laptop, or within their backups. 47% of people actually have that actually believe that they're backups. So almost half of the people out there think backups are just as important as their regular environment, as far as that it can be attacked. And then when we talk about the practice, only 57% of folks do regular recoveries, right? So it's a matter of how do I make sure that I can meet my business SLAs? And the only way you can really make sure is by practicing. And the nice thing is, a lot of the technologies today, especially in the backup space, are snap recoveries, right? They're instantaneous. You don't have to stream a petabyte of data to prove you can do a backup or a recovery, that takes weeks to do. You can bring back your email system through snap recoveries. You can, make sure that it comes up properly. You can automate a lot of that stuff to make sure that LDAP comes up first, then Outlook comes up, and then people have access to their mail, right? And you can test, each group almost weekly, right, to make sure that you can at least have the core parts of the business, what we call the critical infrastructure capabilities, are coming up properly, quickly, and you're meeting your business SLAs. The other thing we talk about is zero trust. It's been, a big buzzword in the industry for a long time. This is more in case someone hasn't heard of it, but most people have. How do you move from a perimeter-based, basically a castle and moat environment, to a perimeterless, environment when it comes to identity management, right? So how do I make sure that nothing is trusted, everything is verified for everything that gets touched? And recently we've implemented, well, not just implemented, but we've been working on a solution to help implement zero trust across the board, and we'll showcase that here in a second. The other thing I wanted to talk about is in our products, and again, this is more of an eye chart than anything else, but in our products, and as you can see, it's all of our products, not just any one, right? when we speak to customers, some customers come into us looking for a particular solution. Maybe they need more storage, maybe they need a server, maybe they need a PC fleet, something. The goal of this chart is to showcase the fact that we build security into everything we do, and we build zero trust capabilities into everything we do. This is taken right from the NIST standards of the 192 activities. What capabilities do we have in our solutions? So if you're a customer and you come to one of our executive briefings and you look at this slide, you say, well, I'm really here to talk about servers. You can zero in on the server platform, take a look at what is offered, and then when the person who is the server SME comes in to talk to you, you can drill down on a lot of those capabilities. Now, in addition, one of the things that we've done is we worked with the Department of Defense, and we announced this last year at Dell Technology World, is to build out, and what Dell is building is a zero trust kind of infrastructure. So that is through one particular SKU, you can drop this in, and if you're a federally regulated industry, if you're a critical infrastructure industry, if you're any one of those industries that gets money from the federal government, that has to adhere to a zero trust, making sure you have a zero trust implementation done, you can actually buy that from Dell. Now, we're waiting, this has gone through its certification and approval. We got done around August, September timeframe, beginning of September. They're going to come back and tell us how we fared. Do we need to fix anything? But through us and 30 different partners that we utilize, we've built an infrastructure that aligns to the 152 capable, I don't know exactly how many, but 100.
This is just all physical?
All physical. Yep.
So would you be able to offer secure cloud solution?
Yes. So this actually runs in the cloud, and anything you put behind it within the cloud meets the zero trust needs from what the Department of Defense says.
Can you tell a little bit more about that? Like your own private cloud?
No, it will run in multiple different clouds, but right now it was tested with our physical stuff that can actually run in the cloud. So I'm not exactly positive, and part of it is the fact that our intellectual property, part of why we don't talk about who the partners are and that sort of thing, it's like an intellectual property kind of thing. But if whatever you put behind this meets the federal regulations for the zero trust.
Well, let me ask it another way. If there was a hyperscaler who had a government cloud and I as a government agency wanted to run this in it, is that how possible is that?
I believe it's very possible. I don't know the exact answer, but I can find out.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
You all currently going through the FedRAMP process on this?
Well, the first thing is it has to be certified. And once they certify it, then we can go through all the FedRAMP stuff and that sort of thing as far as it's on the checklist of what you can buy.
Gotcha.
Yep. That's a part of our process of getting it validated for the federal government.
Gotcha.
So all of that to say is what we're really trying to do is help you figure out how to change that shape of that threat funnel, how to reduce the number of threats that are actually coming in. And when they do come in, how do we reduce by the mere factor that we're reducing the number of threats, we're providing less that you have to detect and respond to, right? And then when you actually have to do recovery, you're recovering the critical information that helps to get your business back up and running, right? So that's really the function of all of the capabilities that we're building into our, servers, networking, storage, data protection, PCs, et cetera, is meant to try to do.